Hey there, and welcome to Connect the Dots Learning Center podcast. I'm Stephanie Wagers, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a seasoned therapist, clinic owner, or just starting out, this podcast is your go to spot for insights, tips, and stories that'll help you connect the dots in your practice. Today, I'll be talking with Dee Bills. Dee began her career as a physical therapist, spending 20 years helping patients. In 2013, she joined her husband Mike's physical therapy practice as the director of administration. It didn't take her long for her to notice that the front office team needed better support. To address this, Dee created a training system for the front desk, ensuring they could manage patients smoothly from the first call to the end of treatment. This effective approach led Dee to found Front Office Guru in 2016, helping other practices achieve similar success. In 2020, she launched a virtual training platform, making it easier for practices everywhere to train their front desk teams. Today, Dee is dedicated to helping practice owners empower their staff and improve patient care. Let's welcome Dee Bills. All right, well, welcome Dee Bills. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. I know you because we've used your program, but I want to share all the amazing things that you guys have done for us and what you can do for other practices. But first, let's just start. Can you kind of tell me your journey of what you're a PT, but what got you to where you are right now?
Yeah. Strange journey. Mike and I are both therapists, and for almost 20 years, we had an agreement that we would never work together. And we had very separate careers. I was more of a neuro specialist. He was definitely ortho. And in that time frame, he bought his practice and from the hospital he worked at, and he was just happy to do his thing. It was his dream. It was not my dream at all. And I never saw myself in the practice. And then one day we were at a conference, and the group that he was getting coaching from was like, she's like really organized. Why is she not working with you? And we were both like, because we want to stay married. And they're like, no, really. And I'm like, no, really. And so that was an interesting thing. And they were like, no, you really need to do this. And I was kind of at a transition point about 11 years ago. And I was like, all right. Same weekend, we were at a financial course, and the guy was talking about make more money. And I was like, okay, we're PT practice. We take insurance as like orthodontists, ophthalmologists in this room. And I'm like,
Right.
how do we make more money? And he goes, we got to find all the holes that you're losing money and you got to fix them. And so for the next hour, Mike listened to the financial stuff, and I was like, front desk, front desk, front desk. Our front desk was a wreck. And I sat down and I was like, okay, this is where our problem is. And I just went back and started tackling it, looking at our staffing, looking at how we best manage patients. And the next thing I know, we're running at a 95% or better arrival rate. Our
Oh,
evals are converting at 90% or better. And everybody started asking for help. And I was like, wait, maybe this is what I want to do. And I kept talking about it. You know how you talk about something
yep.
and but you don't, you're like, it's kind of that dream, but you're like, oh, I got to do this, so I can't do that. One day Mike
Right.
goes, you know what? And he said it in all love. He's like, I love you to the moon and back, but you're fired. He's like, just go do this thing. I want you to be happy. And so that was a big thing for me. He didn't fire me like in a bad way, but he was like, I
Right.
love you, go do this. And I I had maybe like 10 or 12 people that were reaching out. I offered them a chance to start. I
Mhm.
started with coaching full time. And then just the ability to help more people is how I ended up here. And so, yeah,
Yeah. And then you had to really break it down, right? Like, you know, the problem, there's holes in the schedule, but why? And then like kind of getting to that why. So
yeah,
like, for pediatrics, like it's its own beast
it
for
is.
sure compared to like ortho or
Mm.
outpatient. A good cancellation rate is, 90% or not 90%, 10%. Like if
Yeah.
we get there, we would be like
Mhm.
celebrating.
Yeah.
But for like ortho, I think it's a little bit different. So can you kind of go into a little bit the reasons why people cancel?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest reasons that people cancel is we assume they know what we expect from them.
Mhm.
Right? So, whether that's peds or ortho, it doesn't matter. It's this expectation of, we live our job for 8 hours a day, most of us, or more, and we know exactly what we need, and we think it's common sense to people, and it's not. I'll sit in the hair salon and she'll be talking about, she'll be in the middle of cutting my hair and she'll go, oh my God, my next person just canceled last minute. Or can you believe the first 3 people today were late? And that's why I had to sit and wait for 35 minutes last time, right? And so expectations not being clearly defined and explained is one of the number one reasons. The next reason is we make it okay to cancel or no show because we don't confront it. We're afraid of that bad review because thanks to social media, bad reviews are a thing, those are the 2 top reasons. The next reason is they've never been handled by any other medical practice. And so, they just assume you're not going to handle them, or it's okay because it was okay at their last doctor or at the hospital or whatever. And then finally with peds, the 4th reason that I have found working, I did work one-on-one with peds practices before I got started in the academy so that I had a really good grasp of what you all experience, because it is sometimes a little bit different. You all have a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper is the parent or the caregiver. And some of this isn't as real to the caregiver as it is to the child. I mean, yes, they have reality points on it. I have to carry my kid everywhere, or, she can't play with her friends the same way, or, all those different areas. But your service, because it's so long-term, becomes a rote action for families, meaning it's just another aspect or part of their life versus when you have that dentist appointment, you're less likely, I'm not saying people don't cancel, but you're less likely to cancel because you're like, oh, this tooth has been bothering me, or this is whatever.
It's a one and done kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that's the other part of it is maybe it becomes not a rote action for us as well, but like you guys are a lifelong for many of your kids, or a very long plan of care, whereas ortho is in most cases much shorter, most cases. And so people start to take it almost like not take advantage, but it almost like they just see it as something that they could, oh, you know what, this week we got a lot going on, we're just going to cancel, or, and so it requires your team members to be constantly on with these families and keeping that reality going nonstop.
Yeah, it does. I always kind of talk to my providers like, yes, front desk is huge, but it's also the providers. And if they don't explain why the parent needs to show up, like what will change for the parent when, Johnny gets better? Will it, because really we will only do something if it impacts us, right? If I know that I can get Johnny not to tantrum and make me late to work, then I'm going to show up for that OT appointment.
Yeah, exactly. And
I really
that's
clean that down
huge.
their throats. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And therapists, look, we went to school to master our craft, but none of us learned sales as providers. And so, you look at that and everything our front office and our providers do is a sale. And so again, exactly like you said, if mom doesn't see that this is a problem for mom, and mom's getting really busy or stressed, she's going to take out the things that are easiest to take out. And we have to help her to see that there is that long-term effect of keeping your child in therapy consistently week after week, or those 2 visits a week. And I know for you guys sometimes that's really hard to get to 2 visits a week because there's so many children that need your help and not enough providers to actually meet that demand. And so and I think that's part of it too, is once a week they think, oh, it's just once a week, and so we have to change their mindset.
Yeah. So speaking of changing mindset, what do you think is the biggest kind of question or area that front desk tends to avoid talking about, and why? Like, what are those conversations, what are they avoiding?
Well, money, money is a button for all of us, and you never know when that button's going to get pushed. And so having that conversation with a family member about cost of care is huge, and so if I'm worried about paying my bills every week, and you look on social media right now in the news, and we're the inflation And people are worried. And then they have to tell somebody that they have a $4,000 deductible and they have to pay that $4,000 before the insurance is going to kick in, or they only get so many visits a year and then they're going to have to go private pay for the rest of the year. That's probably the most difficult conversation that your team members will struggle with, because they have their own buttons on money. And if they think, gosh, I couldn't pay $70 a week or
Right.
$170 a week, then they're going to portray that to the patient, or in this case, the parent.
Sir, your copay is $70.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh
it's not a
gosh,
big deal for them.
yeah. And the thing is they actually create their own problem there, because I could pay it or would be willing to pay it if I don't have to, do this or this for my child anymore, or to be able to see my child live and thrive like my ideal. I, as a parent, may be very willing to pay it no matter how rich or poor I am. And so if we present it in a way that is hesitant or worried that they're not going to pay, now we're setting them up to see a problem that wasn't there. So that's the first one. The next one is cancellations, like handling cancels. Again, and in both cases, it's the emotional reaction that they're afraid of, because
it's
a challenge, right? It's that with money, you could have tears, you could have, I can't afford this, you could have, I'm not paying that. And without scripting and really good training on how to handle that objection or that consideration, the family member is going to take a step back, or they're going to limit the amount of care they're going to get for their child because, again, that consideration. Cancels, they're definitely afraid of getting yelled at or threatened by a family member, because even I always tell people in ortho, I always say, even the sweetest little lady who has just pinched your cheeks and told you that you are a sweetheart, the minute you handle her on money, or like say, like, this is how much it's going to be for that cancellation, she's going to just be like, and you're just, and so those are the two biggest mindset shifts that we have to help them to make, is that you can talk about money without it being a problem and without you having to get your considerations in the way. And then same thing with cancels. There's an excellent way to handle patients without having to have that fight about money or them making you wrong.
I can tell you, like, before we got your program, it was like that feeling of, we'd start the week with the schedule completely full, and then it would just fall apart. And then we have this huge wait list. And I'm like, what is happening? I can't serve the people on my wait list. The people that are on the schedule don't show up. And then they get mad when we have this like flex policy. And our front desk kept getting so much pushback. And so when I found your program, I was like, yes, but it took a while of scripting, but finally they got so confident, and they have the parents trained, and they're like, I know, they don't get mad about it anymore, or they understand. And we have this, the front desk has this saying, WWDD. What would D do?
I've heard that before. That's so funny. I'm so excited about that.
I know. And one of them will look to the other, like when they're stumped on a question, and they'll just be like, well, what would D say to do? And I'm like, you're right. And it just works. And I think one of your biggest points is don't apologize.
That's right.
Take control of the conversation. And our staff is young. It's hard to find front desk that is a position that flips constantly.
It does.
It takes a long time to train and all of that. So that was another big piece of selling point for your program, was like bringing somebody in, having them go through these modules and know what kind of language we want them to use.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, we love it. Love it. Love it. Can't sing your praises enough. But speaking of front desk and flipping, what characteristics do you think that we should be looking for when we're hiring front desk?
Yeah. I always say, like, obviously we don't want the witch behind the window. It's not who we are. We're not that.
Can I check you in?
Yeah. Or that it just has to be this way. I would say you don't want Thor behind the window, and you don't want the witch behind the window. You want somebody who can express that they're kind and caring, but at the same time, they're not a pushover. Right. And so some of that requires training, but you're looking for somebody who wants to learn. right? Somebody who is really interested in taking on the program, like you said, and sitting down and learning it and being able to learn a script and use it with a patient and feel very confident about it. It's in fact something that I highly recommend practices do in their hiring process, right? Don't just sit down with somebody at the front desk and be like, it's just a front desk position. Let's just interview them once and you bring them in. You need to interview them multiple times to find pain points, to stress certain things, make them sit at your front desk and see how it's and especially in a pediatric practice, you guys it's an ever revolving door of people and children and families in the waiting room and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I always say, really look for somebody who's kind, somebody who's very detail oriented, who is willing to communicate and able to communicate with others outside of text. And they really want to learn, so that when you are training them, they're interested in what you're giving them and they're interested in applying it.
Any tips on, the younger generation really didn't use a phone as much, like their text, whatever, they're super comfortable, but you hand them a phone and it's like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
Any tips, like, is there any way we can kind of tease that out if they're not going to be good on the phone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first do a phone interview. How do they sound? I mean, think about it this way. If I can't sit at home or sit in my car and have a conversation with you, and it doesn't have to be like crazy detailed, but if I can't get on there and I can't sound like I'm interested in talking to you, or that I'm, or you see me struggling to communicate with you, that might not be a sign that they're a great team member. Another thing is one of the things, and I always tell practices this one, put them at your front desk and make them answer your phones for 30 minutes in either their first in-office interview or their second in-office interview. Like I said, I don't hire somebody fast, because people can put on a really great mask for a quick, I could get on a phone interview with you, right? And I could be sitting at home on the couch with my dogs and I could do a great phone interview and life is good. And you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And then you bring me into your office. Oh, there's Hazel. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
And then you bring them into your office and they're like dead or they can't make eye contact. And if they can't make eye contact with you or even another front office team member, that's a problem, right? And so we will actually hand them a script of how to answer the phone. It's really simple, just being able to say, good afternoon, Anywhere Therapy, this is Dee, how can I help you today? And can they learn that within 5 to 10 minutes? Can they reproduce that? Can they sound interested? Because again, you don't want Eeyore answering the phone. Okay, my first employee I ever inherited to manage from Mike was Eeyore. And I remember one day my mother-in-law, I'm driving to work and she goes, call your office. I'm like, why? She goes, call your office. And I'm like, I'm going there. She goes, call your office. I'm like, okay, I love my mother-in-law. She's military wife. She's like, just do it. And then she's like, then call me back. And so I was like, all right, I got to make up an excuse if I need to talk to Mike or whatever. And so I called the office. And it's funny, in person, I might have seen it, but not realized it. But when I called my office, I was like, oh my God, it was like, good afternoon. And you're like, oh my God. And so funny story there, but put them at your front desk, give them a script, have them answer the phone. And then you're all probably thinking right now, well, they don't know anything next. Okay, no problem. Somebody's sitting behind them ready to field the call. And you want them to be able to say that, right? Good afternoon. This is Anywhere Therapy. This is Dee. How can I help you? And then they hear what the person says and they acknowledge them. I got you. You know what? I have the perfect person for you to talk to. Hold on. I'm going to transfer you over there, right? Super easy phone script to do. You can have them do it for 3 minutes. You can have them do it for 30 minutes. The 3 minutes is usually they fail so miserably and can't get the rhythm that you're like, okay, this is not worth it. But the 30 minutes you give it because you want to see if they can reproduce that over time. Now you're like, this is gold. This person can do that. Now continue on with the interview. Have them meet with other team members. But my best advice is those two things. Can they get on a phone interview with you and not sound like they're distracted or dead? Because if they do for you, for a job that they want, they're going to do it to a patient or parent. And number two, sit them at the front desk and get them to do this and listen to them. Look at, like, if they're doing it great for 5 minutes, don't stop there. Give them a 30-minute cycle so you can see, can they stay on for that 30 minutes? Because anybody can do something for 5 minutes, but 30 minutes of answering your phones is a challenge. So yeah, those would be my two ways of how you could weed out those.
Yeah, I love it. We do phone interviews, but I love the idea of putting them at the front desk. I can't tell you how many phone interviews I've done. And it's literally like I'm waking them up. I'm like, and they'll be like, hi, this is Stephanie, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, check.
Well, and my advice on that is be done. It's amazing to me. People are like, yeah, but it's so hard to interview people. I'm like, no, the minute your spidey senses go off or you have your relationship with that person is always going to be a struggle from that point forward. If you hire them.
That though, because I always feel like, oh gosh, got to get through like at least 2 questions.
It's okay to ask 2 questions, but go to one of your easier ones where you're just looking for something simple. At that point, don't go to the harder questions or the more in-depth answer questions. Be like, I always start out, so I always take over. I'm like, when they answer the phone, I'm like, hi, this is Dee. I'm calling from Anywhere Therapy. How are you doing today? And, the good ones will, right away will be like, I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking, or something, professional-ish sounding. Even if they're young, they might be like, oh, I'm well, thanks, or something. And then it's okay, so good. If the person's like, or whatever, I always, no matter whether it's good or not, I'll say, so I just want to let you know that this interview, that we're going to do an interview today. I have several questions that I ask anybody that I interview for our family. And I do say family because they are family. And then I say, and then we'll go from there. Right. So I don't promise this is going to be, I never tell them how long the interview is going to be on the phone. I never give them any forewarning of what we're doing or any of that. And if it's not going to work out, I'll be like, again, I said I have a few questions, right? And then let's say I get through 1.5 questions and they're just not sparking the love. I'm just like, okay, great. So that's what I have for you today. Do you have any questions for me? And I think in most cases, they get the point that
you're not a fit.
Yeah. Right. And then I say, we're still in the middle of this round of our interviews. And one of us will be back to you in the next 24 hours to let you know whether we'll be moving on or not. And I just wish them a great day. And I wish them success and a great day. And that's what my email wishes them as well, success and a great day. And I let them
love it. Love it. I always give my husband stink eye because he's like trying to be nice. I'm like, stop, we're done. And he's like, so I'm going to make him listen to this.
Lovely. He's great.
He is great. But I'm like,
that's awesome.
Okay. Any tidbits on how practice managers can help improve communication amongst the front desk and their patients and just in the general team? I know and specifically like maybe second question to that, like sometimes the front desk feels like, oh, the providers get acknowledged all the time, but we're just, they're working their tail off. And how do we improve the communication between provider and front desk?
A couple of things. One, they really have to have very well-defined roles. Your providers need to understand the role of your patient care coordinators and what they're allowed to have them do and what they're not allowed to have them do. A lot of upsets occur. I worked with a lot of peds practices one-on-one, and a lot of the biggest upsets they get offended by is when the therapist comes along and says, I need you to fax this for me, or hey, can you go call that patient for me? And so the first thing I found is really clearly defined roles, right? Because your clinical team does not manage your front desk. Either an office manager does or a director does. And so staff have to understand, I call it the dirty dancing rule. This is your space. This is our space.
I love it.
And they have to understand space. And what's allowed and what's not, and that's first. When we hire on anybody in the clinical team, from rehab tech all the way up through our providers, they have to sit at the front desk. They don't do the job, but they have to sit there for about 2 hours twice in their first week of employment to see how much goes on and how much activity is there. And then we'll just sit with them. Yeah, it was something I learned early on, was that the providers would get this, like, it was this us versus them mentality. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
or the why did you fill that spot?
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it's my job. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we make them sit up there, and then we sit with them after, the providers, and we have that conversation of, hey, what did you notice? Right. So it's finding out what they really noticed up there. Oh my God, they never stop working. Yes. And then as that, we can tie that into our expectations of our therapists and say, okay, so here are expectations of you. I want you to be very aware in all of this. These are your expectations, not somebody else's. So we need to make sure that you understand our patient care coordinators can't take on any other actions that aren't part of their duties. And so we also make sure they all understand what each other's duties are. Our clinical team understands that they are not allowed to give a direct command to the or order to the front desk, right? But yeah, so that's a big one. And then, team meetings that are team building is big for us too. We have a staff meeting every week. Even during holiday weeks and other things, we'll do a staff meeting and we'll play silly games or do something for the first 10 minutes that are team oriented. And it's not clinical versus front desk. We're all intermingled. We play games where we're all striving to earn something in the practice. We found our staff is not as money oriented as they are games and winning oriented. Don't get me wrong, that people love money. We love a little money, but they love to be able to earn.
They love. Yeah.
Yes.
You do.
And we all think they want bonuses. I'm not saying people don't want to earn fairly, but what we found is, like, for team building, for the team to come together, we're playing a game. And so everybody's metrics have to be at this level. And then we'll all get to wear jeans and t-shirts on Friday, or jeans and jerseys on Friday, or we'll all get a smoothie at the next staff meeting if we hit these targets. And so we try to do stuff where it's team building, or games that the whole group is working on, like, hey, let's fill the schedule by tomorrow. And therapists, where can you help us find one more spot, or and I know in peds it's a little different there, but you can certainly be like, hey, who can I call to get in at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
To circle back to your thing on the therapist, like, why did you fill that spot? That is a constant conversation I get, especially in peds. And that is related to them forgetting why they're there, right? We are all there for the same reason. None of us, front desk, clinical, billing, we're all there to make sure that in your case, in all children that need our help have the opportunity to get the care that they need and deserve, right? That's why we're here. The front office team members have a role, and that's to fill the schedule and keep it full, because any empty spot represents a patient who's not getting care. That's all it represents. Now, our therapists sometimes, they get behind on their notes, they get behind on whatever. And so it's like, yes, I get a free hour. And then all of a sudden it's like, what did you think?
Yeah, it's like they're purposely punishing them, like, and why did you choose that kid? Like, like they know.
Well, mom could come in and nobody else answered the phone.
Yeah, I called 40 people and this one took it.
And so it is orienting our therapists and reminding them constantly, look, the front office team members, that is their number one role, is to keep that schedule full with children that need our help. If they're on our list and they're an active patient, they are free game to get in on an appointment, because we're here to help them. And sometimes the therapists just need to be reoriented on that. And then the conversation for me with therapists is, what made you have that reaction? Like, what caused you to react that way for us filling the schedule? And I'll just sit back and listen. And sometimes they're like, oh, I'm so busy and okay, that's what we need to handle. Not
right. Why are you not getting your notes done? What's happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So your program even works on, like, company culture
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
kind of a side way, I would say, right?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Look, we are a family. I was just talking to another owner earlier this week, and I was telling her how anytime I hired people, inevitably I've spent so much time interviewing you and onboarding you. When I offer you the job, usually I get a hug, right? And I'm like, welcome to the family. It's not welcome
Yeah.
to the practice, it's welcome to the family. And, you know, giving somebody that opportunity was always big for me, but then it was always hard when they left or they had to, it was time for them to leave.
Mhm.
And we were walking one night and I don't know what we were talking about. We were talking about family and things like that with the clinic. That's what we were talking about. And he said, for all those years we said, um, welcome to the family and all of that. He goes, we'd still welcome into our family. Now it's our team members who hire them, but we've now shifted our belief system to they have to earn that right to be a part of the family, right? And so
Yeah.
you bring on a team member, your expectations, that's the biggest thing to set from day one with your staff is
Mhm.
you are part of my family. I care about you, but here are my expectations. And really they have to earn that right to stay and be a
Mhm.
member of the family and be considered a member of the family. And when he said that, it was just such a huge shift for me because, again, you know, the team members that are there, I haven't been in the practice in 7 years except to be a patient. So when I go back, I walk in the door and I get hugs from the team, and that's my goal. But I want to be able to genuinely hug them back. So I need to know
Yeah.
that they've earned that right with their metrics, and that they're being open and honest with what they need from us, and they're doing what we hired them to do,
Mhm.
and that's how they maintain that. And so yeah, it was a big thing
Yeah.
for us with all
I love
team
that.
members.
Yeah, they have to pull their weight, just like a family. You have to do
Yeah.
your chores, you gotta pull your weight, and you have to be
Yeah.
kind to everyone in the family.
Yes, very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Nobody, it's funny. I was taking a class recently and I had this realization. It's not new to me, but it was really strong, just being out in the world after taking this class and looking around. We have to remember that we're all fighting a battle. And you may think this person is just a really mean, rude person or that they're intentionally coming at you for something, but you really don't know what's behind that. You know what I mean? And it could have nothing to do with you personally. It
Mhm.
legitimately could be whatever battle they're fighting inside or somewhere else in their life. And so it's just that ability, both as a practice owner, as a manager, as a team member, to be able to step back and just realize that not everything is about us and that
Absolutely.
somebody could just be having a bad day. I don't know where that came from, but it really
No, but
ties into
it's
team.
so true, and as a practice owner, when you employ people, you employ all of their drama,
Yeah. They're their
right?
family. Yeah.
Family because they're family, and
Yeah.
bad things happen to people, and, wow, we've had some doozies,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, it's you gotta do it gracefully.
Yeah. Well, and
Sure.
it's hard. I mean, we had a team member. Now, Mike and I live, most people don't know this. We live about 1,000 miles away from our practice, and
Wow,
our team
I
runs
didn't know
it.
that.
Yeah. And the team runs it and Mike manages them remotely. And all my systems have been in the practice now for 11 years. And like I said, 7 years ago, I stepped back.
And
The
that shows
most
you
I
how well it works.
It
That's
does, it
amazing.
does. When
Yes.
used right, and that's the thing. That's the key, and thank you for that. When used
Oh, it
really
does.
well,
Yeah.
you can use it anywhere, but it does come down to us managing the team and helping them. And, I am not there anymore. But I listen when our management team comes down here and does some training from times, like multiple times a year. And they were at dinner a few weeks ago and here in the house, and they were talking about something. And I'm like, this was a problem back in October. Like I'm the silent fly on the wall, like now going, okay, you guys, right? But it requires that ability to look and listen, to manage your team, to educate your team. Um, that was the biggest thing for me 11 years ago when I took on that role, was just really learning the position and then making sure my team members learn the position and giving them systems that they can manage their patients, right? And
Mhm.
so EMRs are great, texting is great, but that human interaction is sometimes that can be the hardest thing to train your staff on, but it's the most important thing to train your staff on. And
Yeah. That kind
and
of
that
goes
was my goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Kind of goes into my next question. So, to me, and you can answer if you think it's differently, but it seems that trend with front office is to have like e-check-in and less face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? How do we manage that without,
Yeah.
with cost of living going up and trying to cut costs? How do we do this well?
So yeah, and so I'm really big and on that interaction, and part of it is because of control points, and it's something you guys learn very early on in the academy when I talk about mindset and control. We have to teach our team, and we all have to maintain the right mindset when we're managing people, because our patients have baggage too, and they have bad days, and they have beliefs and different things. And so, expectations of staff, expectations of patients, our staff have to learn how to have that. And then, but looking at communication, again, we're shifting into a world of technology, right? We can email you, we can text you, we can FaceTime you, we can Zoom you.
The IG,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are in healthcare. We are in the business of people. And there can be a happy balance, but there does need to be communication. And there's a hierarchy of communication. The top hierarchy is, we were just talking about this in office hours this week. The top hierarchy is face to face, right? You and I are standing in the same room. We're having a communication. I can see your body language. I can read it. I can see your facial expressions. It's a lot harder to ghost somebody when you're standing right in front of them, right? Or not schedule when you're right there. Okay, well, that's not always going to happen because people, society or people are trying to text or email. The next one is over the phone. Okay, because now at least I can hear your tone of voice. We're communicating with each other in the real time. After that, you get into email, text, direct messaging off of Facebook and stuff. Those are lost control points, because it's really easy to ghost you. If I'm a patient, it's really easy for me to ghost you when you message me. And so one of the biggest things I teach practice is, and this is just kind of one of those simple points, is don't make it okay to cancel via text. Okay. If you want to fix your cancellations, a great thing to start with that requires nothing more than changing your texting system programming. Don't make it okay to text to cancel. And what do I mean by that? Well, require people to call your office if they need to cancel or change an appointment, because it's actually less work for your staff to handle those phone calls and handle somebody in real time, than it is for them to have to try to call back the 19 people who texted, because those people aren't going to answer the phone.
No, they're not.
Think about it. I texted you for a reason.
Right. And then they get you. Right. I don't want to talk to you on the phone. Yeah.
I don't want you to handle me. I don't want you to control it on me or whatever it is. And so, and control's not a bad thing. Control is just looking at how we handle situations effectively and efficiently. And again, get those kids in that need our help. And so, you texting for reminders, not against that. But texting to cancel, texting or emailing are the only two things. Like, it's like, hey, you can put a message in most CMRs and most systems. You can put a message, the little dashes that you see after reminder text from certain companies. It'll say, you can just change it to say, hey, if you need to cancel or change your appointment, we need you to call our office, and you give the number. And that way I can just go, oh crap, I do need to cancel that.
We have that, and they still in an email, and they still reply back sometimes. Not everybody, and so then our front desk will train them like, "Hey, we don't respond to these."
Perfect.
Yeah, but
I know you're getting high fives, girl, because like that's perfect. And
because if you do respond to it, you're just reinforcing that behavior.
Yeah,
we've got to change the behavior. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other part of that too is, and I hear this a lot from pediatric practices, which is why I'm going to bring this up. Y'all are like, really, how are you going to change our families? Like, how does your program really change our families after they've been here with us for 5 years or 10 years or whatever? And you think you're going to change your mindset? Yes, you will. It's all about learning the right way to handle them and then
Mhm.
the right way to apply it and then putting
Mhm.
that in place. You found that, yes,
Mhm.
you have families that are
Absolutely.
long term. You have you just it's that you said it. It's that your staff educates. By the way, that's what would
Yeah.
you do? High five those
Yeah.
girls when you or girls and guys when you go back because they took what they learned and they applied it. But
Yeah.
it's about educating them and confronting that. And that's you can't do that via text
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
because and
Mhm.
so I love that your team educated them. So
Yeah.
you gotta high five them
Yeah.
when you
No,
connect
and
with
I'll
them
tell you
today.
another little example. So we have a cancel within 24 hours, regardless of the
Yeah.
reason. And this one family was giving the front desk a bad time because their child was sick. And so we just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Tell me what's been going on." And the parent said something about, well, on Monday, they, had a bad cough and weren't feeling well. And they kept them home from school. And this is like Thursday. And so she said something like, oh, so it sounds like they were sick on Monday. That would have been a great time to call and give us a heads up notice. I know. I was like, boom. It was
You
so
told me
amazing.
what would you do on that?
That was a WWDD. She came in and we're like, dang, that was good. And the parent was
Was
like,
good.
because she caught him in it, just like, you got to let us know when it happens. And yeah, illness happens. So, but yeah, that was just amazing. So I just share that
And
with you.
that was awesome. High
Yes. Yeah.
fives. That's consistent messaging. And that's the other
Mhm.
part of part of training your team is to train them so that I don't care if there's one person sitting at your front desk or five, the message has to be consistent across all team members, but
Mhm.
to every single patient or parent, every patient or parent has to hear the exact same message and it has to be consistent from team member to team member to team member so that nobody can play mom and dad off each other in the
Right.
sense of patient care coordinator A versus patient care coordinator B.
Yeah.
It's they can't play them because they can't be like, well, she said blah blah blah, or 3 weeks ago she let me do this, and so that's the other side of it. And they
Yep.
obviously had each other's backs on that, and that's awesome. So well
Mhm.
done. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Thank you. Now, if I can get my providers on board, I do have them call when they have a no show
Yep.
and sometimes I'll hear them be like, well, that's okay. And I'm like, is it okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah.
that's the other side of it. So I'm glad you brought that up. Part of when you're training your front office and you have policy in on your front office, anytime it's after the patient, right? So anything up until the new patient shows up for that eval is your front desk.
Mhm.
100%, it's their responsibility to get all that handled. But the minute that patient becomes a patient, it is the team's responsibility to make sure they show up.
Yeah.
Now, our front desk owns the schedule and they should own the schedule. Your therapist should not own their schedule. They are
Nope.
there to do one job only, and that is to provide care for the children that they're caring for. The front desk's responsibility on that is to fill that schedule so the providers can do their thing.
Mhm.
Now, I sold you a plan of care, which it is a sale to get them to
Yeah.
agree to that, right? But it's my job as a provider to make sure that you are meeting that plan of care, or else your child's not going to meet their goals, and that's on me. And so nobody in your practice should be making it okay to cancel or no show
Mhm.
with late notice because it's hurting another child, right?
Mhm.
If Sally's no showing with for her son, but this other child could have come in last minute, same day, they're like your priority number one patients that would do anything to get in and just can't. That's a huge, that's where we're bleeding
Yeah.
money, visits, patients, and
Yeah.
again, we always tie it back to kids. How can we help
Right.
children, all children receive the care they need and deserve?
Right.
And we can't do that if our therapists, and so that's another conversation of with therapists. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
and it's
welcome.
like it's that willingness to I call it a caring conversation in our
Yes.
clinic because they say that's okay because they don't want to offend the other person. But in their head, they're like, oh my gosh, you've canceled the last 3 times.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
trained them to be like, oh, bummer, or just have that
Yeah.
conversation. It looks like we
Yeah.
haven't seen you in 3 weeks. And, in order
Yeah.
to the whole spiel that you've given
Yeah.
us. And so now I'm
Yeah.
hearing them say that more. And
Good.
instead of like, that's okay. They're not saying, damning them because they didn't come in. Because,
Oh.
we all do accidents. It happens. Yeah.
Well, and it's about goals. So one of the things providers have at their disposal are goals,
Mhm.
right? And it's important. What we found a long time ago was it's important for the patient, in this case parents, to set goals, meaningful goals for them, for their child, or for their care. So if we're talking about orthopedic or a patient, the patient should be setting goals for their care, but the parents, the best way for a therapist to be able to handle a parent who's canceling frequently or not, meeting a plan of care for their child is during the eval, or even you can be at any time during care. So for your long-term patients, you can still say, hey, we have a new policy. We're going to spend today setting some goals for your child.
Mhm.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. When the parent sets goals, now when they're no showing, it's like, hey, I want to remind you that when you and I were talking 3 weeks ago, or when you and I were talking when you're, and use child's name, um, signed on, or when we set your goals, you had said that you want him to be able to X. So it doesn't matter if it's speech, PT, OT, behavioral, right? The ABA, we get into that whole conversation and we say, and now it's such an easy conversation. Instead of having to beat them up, you can just
Yeah.
say, when we were resetting goals a few weeks ago, and I recommend, get the parents to reset goals every 60 or 90 days.
Absolutely. We need to make
You
sure they're
can,
important to the parent.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Mhm.
now you can tie it back to it. You can be like, look, you guys have missed the last 3 weeks, and you're not going to meet that goal if we don't get this going. So and then it should not be our responsibility at that point. It should be the parents. So
Mhm.
how are you going to help us to make sure you're showing up? Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to help us? What you can do is put it in such a nice way.
Yeah.
And you've learned that with some of the other stuff in the
Oh,
program outside
absolutely.
of this, but there's
Yeah.
just one tip to help therapists handle their patients. Um, every time somebody's late, we have a process for that. We have a
Mhm.
process for onboarding that really develops that relationship. And then obviously we have the big one, which everybody comes to me for, which is fix my
Oh,
cancellations.
right. Yeah.
And, the pediatric practices I've worked with in the past, and I know you guys are on point for, you're going to get there. I know you are, but 93% or 94% arrivals is not unrealistic. It does happen. It is about having the right scripting with that cancellation program and just keep putting it in. And so I love your team. So you tell your team that I am challenging them to hit 93% arrival rate. And if they do that and they can maintain it for, let's say, 2 weeks in a row, I will send them something special via the mail.
Oh my gosh, they're
Thank you for
so
having
goal
me on.
loaded. Yes.
Do it.
I'm
Like,
gonna
we
do
set a
it.
challenge for you. And
Yes.
it's a 93% arrival rate, right? Remember, same day cancels and no shows affect your arrival rate. And then they can email me. They can be like, we did it. This is when we did it. Or you can send me the graph, and I'll send them something special because, well, as a thank you for you having me on today, but also because I love that they're like thinking and using it. That's the intent behind my program. And that's the one thing I want to just put on here with this is just, number one, thank you. But number two, things only work when you make sure that they're consistent and they're being used consistently, and that you're applying them, but that your team is consistent.
Mhm.
So this is not a program that's a one and done, right? Because
No.
like you said at the beginning, the team does turn over. And that's the thing we have to realize here is that team training, personal training is never a one-off thing, but team training is never one-off. So to give you a reference, our staff train every week in our practice. That is what afforded me to leave 7 years ago, and our team has turned over over the years. We have a very stable team right now, and but they do study, and they don't just study when things are absolutely awful. They are consistently learning and relearning. That metric, that arrival rate metric, drops by 1 point. And by the way, when I left, it was at 95%. In the
Wow.
last 3 to 4 years, it's been about 97 to
Oh
98%
my
every
gosh, that's
day. Yep.
amazing.
Our patients
Amazing.
don't get mad at us. Remember, 2% of the population is always going to be a jerk. Those mean girls, we can't fix them, but
Yeah.
don't cater to them either.
No.
But the other 98%, they want to be good people. It's our job to keep them there. And so our team train regularly. And if if it's at 98 this week and it drops to 97 next week, they are working on those scripts and they are working on the process. And so for those of you that, if you are interested, please know this isn't a one-off thing. It wasn't designed that way. It was designed to give you training, lifelong training for your team, and give them the tools they need to use, but then go back to. Never ever think
Constantly
that
go
just
back to.
because, yeah, well, and think about it. We can never assume that just because they learned it once, they're going to apply it forever.
Mhm.
And so we have to give them that ability and permission to go back and relearn it, and not relearn it as punishment, but relearn it as a successful action that was working and that somehow fell out. And now we're
Yeah.
going to put it back.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know you have something in the works. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, well, I've been working with front office team members for a while. And recently, this past year, I was at a conference and I was actually at a table, and it was all office managers at the table. And we were talking and they're like, oh, how am I going to make this work? And how am I going to do this? And how is that? And this and that and the other. And I was like, God, you guys are just cleaning up after your staff. That
Mhm.
your job as a manager is to make sure they are getting things done successfully so that you're always tweaking things and it's just moving forward. And one of the girls goes, yeah, we like to call ourselves the Hoovers of the practice, as in like a
Oh,
Hoover vacuum. And I'm
yeah.
like, gosh, I'd never heard of that term before. And now I use it all the time. Like, are you a Hoover? And but so what's coming is the realization that office managers need help too. And so I have a 6-month office manager program coming and starting in September. And we will cover 6 key components of managing your front desk and your team in the front. And it goes along with the training. So I'm going to start it with those that are in my academy and give them the opportunity to start. And other groups obviously have that opportunity coming in the future. And it will be kind of like a revolving thing. So it's not like, oh, we're going to start it and you can only do it at this date. You can start at any time, because it's going to be like one of those perpetual programs where you can join at any time and you will still get that training that was in month 1, but it might be your month 6. And
Yeah.
it's designed in a way to help office managers to be successful. So it will be a group coaching program. It will not be sit in front of a computer online. There will be some study. There will be some videos but there will be interactive during a coaching call the office manager training is designed to help them get their product and help their team get their product. And it can be utilized with the academy, because the academy is designed predominantly for your team members to learn how to talk to people the way they need to have the right scripts to get the right results, and to have training to go back to and feel successful with.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
We're doing that. We're in.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll have I know I'm not even have to think about it. I know you and I'll have a good time.
Yeah.
Whoever, totally into it. We'll help him. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, right. Okay.
So yeah, that's coming.
Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot today. I think that, if you're struggling with your front desk team, or you've had a lot of turnover, or your team just really struggles to manage patients, then we should talk, because I can certainly help you. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to Stephanie. She and Lee and their team have been ideal clients where they are just using it. And that is what it's designed for. It's not meant to sit on a shelf. It's an interactive program. So if you have any questions, you can also schedule a free call. So,
Yeah.
and thank you. Thank you, my friend, very much for having me today. So, yeah.
You're amazing, Dee. You're amazing. Yeah.
Well, you're awesome too, my friend. It's been a pleasure to get to know you too. So thank you.